A new straw poll shows that Joel Embiid, who the Heat will face on Christmas Day, is the favorite to win the MVP trophy. What does that mean for Miami? And where do players like Bam Adebayo and Jaime Jaquez stand in the race for postseason awards? We'll break it all down on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg. I'm an NBA media member and editor at allyoucanheat.com. And joining me, as always, is a longtime NBA reporter and somebody who doesn't want to hear any more about Joel Embiid. It's David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. ESPN released its straw poll for MVP, and Joel Embiid is leading as the favorite to repeat. Behind him are Nikola Jokic, Giannis, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, and several others. Not a surprise, but no Heat player cracks the top 10. I do want to talk about which Heat players could be in the running for some other end-of-season awards later on, but what does this mean for the Heat that top players from their biggest rivals are at or near the top of these MVP rankings, David?
Not a damn thing. I think the fact is that Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid have been in the MVP running, and that's not how Miami operates. It doesn't really matter. I know a lot of Heat fans are frustrated by Jimmy, quote unquote, taking time off and coasting through the regular season and everything else like that. This team has, over the 4 years that Jimmy Butler has been leading this group and Eric Spoelstra at its helm, does something greater than the sum of its regular season parts when it comes to the postseason. They play with an intensity and a fire and a strength that your MVP candidate from Philadelphia or Boston or Milwaukee or anywhere else doesn't really matter, with the exception of Nikola Jovic and the mismatch nightmare that he presented for the Heat in the NBA Finals.
Nikola Jokic.
I'm not that. What did I say?
Jovic.
Nikola Jovic? Yes, it should have been him, but no, it was Nikola Jokic. Aside from Jokic, like, I'm not concerned about Embiid and his gaudy 60-point, 50-point, stat line of foul baiting, because we know that's not going to happen in the playoffs. He's not going to get 28 free throw attempts when he matches up against any team in the playoffs, which is why they've been historically early round exits over the course of Embiid's tenure in Philadelphia. Giannis, who knows with him? Yes, he had his career high the other day. He can go chase whatever game ball he wants to. It doesn't really matter when he faces Miami. Miami has pretty much had Milwaukee's number over the past 4 seasons, with the exception of one time. And other than that, we heard about Jason Tatum being a perennial MVP candidate, and yet at the same time, Boston fans are kind of saying, you know what, we're never going to win anything with Jason Tatum continually crapping the bed as often as he does, and why his problems kind of manifest in the playoff series, especially against Miami. So Celtics fans might have an MVP candidate in Jason Tatum. They might love what Jason Tatum could provide, but they're all terrified of facing the Miami Heat, and with good reason. Without an MVP candidate, Miami's still the better team, and they have the depth, and they have everything that they need in order to be able to beat anybody in the Eastern Conference, which is why I still think that they're a finals favorite.
I agree with you when it comes to these three guys, Joel Embiid, Giannis, and Tatum. It doesn't really matter what they do in the regular season anymore. They got it. All three of them have had playoff shortcomings in recent years that they have to overcome. Giannis probably most recently and most dramatically, obviously, with the first round upset against the Heat last year. He really does need to bounce back. They revamped the entire team around him, traded Jrue Holiday, got Damian Lillard. Like, they made a lot of changes, got rid of their coach, hired a new coach, all because they lost to the Heat in that first round. So he's sort of the one under the most pressure, but you look at his numbers and you could argue he's never been better. And I know that it's been a little clunky in Milwaukee, especially defensively. They're not running as much pick and roll between Damian Lillard and Giannis, but he has never seen more single coverage than he has right now. And I think that's why you're seeing these MVP numbers, and he's got a career high effective field goal percentage and all these things. Like, he's never been this efficient because he's seeing easier coverages now. And I think if you're the Heat, that's just something that you have to game plan against and worry about. And it's not necessarily that these guys are in the MVP conversation and MVP frontrunners right now that should be worrying the Miami Heat. It is that they have been so productive, that Joel Embiid has never been better, right? Separated now from James Harden and Jimmy Butler and all those guys. He's never been better. His passing numbers are better. His scoring numbers are just unbelievable what they're at right now. He is dominant. That's the part that I think should worry Heat fans is all of these, boss level guys have only gotten better. And now in these MVP straw polls, you've got a guy like Tyrese Halliburton from the Pacers. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Indiana is a legitimate, conference finals contender here or finals contender in the East, because they're not. The Pacers are far away. But the fact that he is 7th in this straw poll speaks to the fact that, all right, we already knew that you had like this upper crust of Tatum, Giannis, Embiid in whatever order, but now you maybe have other stars ascending. Maybe, and I don't know how much longer the Heat have the best player on the floor for any of these series, whether it's against Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, or even Indiana, if they were to meet them in the playoffs. So in that respect, I do think it's separate from the MVP award, but I do think all of these guys have just gotten better. And that's something that the Heat need to factor in when it comes to how they approach this season, what kind of seed that they aim to get, what they do at the trade deadline, all these things. They can't just ignore all this stuff and be like, well, we had their numbers in the playoffs before. We always kind of kick it up a notch in the postseason, so we're good. We're just going to chill. I don't think that that's the right approach.
But when has Miami over the past 4 seasons ever had the best player on the floor until the series actually gets played out? Like at the start of every series, I don't know that you can point to one matchup that Miami's had and looked at Miami's roster. Maybe the weakest opponent during that stretch might have been the Atlanta Hawks, coming off of their Eastern Conference Finals run the year
2
before.
years ago when they were when the Heat were the 1 seed.
Right. And a lot of people were still like, oh, Trae Young, Hawks in 6. Like, I don't know that it's mattered.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think the 2 times though that the Heat have faced a team with a better player was the NBA Finals in the bubble. Like, as great as Jimmy Butler was, like Anthony Davis, you could argue was better. Maybe LeBron was better. Like, I think that was probably the closest. And then obviously, maybe okay, that's fair. I mean, we don't have to go there, but it was close. It was a lot closer than anybody else they faced in that playoff run before in the bubble. And because obviously Giannis didn't play well, and Tatum didn't have a great series. And then I would say, Jokic, like you said earlier, was just flatly the best player on the court in the NBA Finals last year, and the Heat lost both of those series. Like, I'm with you. I don't think that the Heat need to. I'm not saying that the Heat should panic. I think that Miami's best basketball is ahead of them. But
yes,
I am a little bit more worried about a team like Philadelphia than I was to begin the season, because I think Joel Embiid has been that good. I actually am not as worried about the Celtics anymore. I don't know how you feel, but the fact that Tatum is 6th, despite his team having the best or tied for the best record over the last couple of weeks in the NBA, their net rating is 100%, whatever. They're crushing teams. They're starting 5, their top 6, their top 7 is the best in the league. And if you kind of go historically, like best player on best team should at least be among the front runners. Doesn't necessarily have to be the favorite, but among the front runners. And he's kind of an afterthought in this like real legitimate MVP conversation. If I'm a Celtics fan, I'm kind of thinking like, yo, what's up with Jason Tatum? I kind of would like to see a little bit more from him. The fact that he's not like a real MVP favorite right now is a little strange. And I think Tatum is clearly a notch below the Tatum, the Embiids and the Giannis's and the Jokic's, which is still a very good player. He's a top 10 player, but he's not that either.
I think that it's more of a reflection of the fact that they've got a more well-rounded cast, that everybody's kind of looking at the starting unit and recognizing them. The production from Embiid is so gaudy because there's no James Harden there, because Tyrese Maxey as a young player still has to take a back seat to Joel. In Milwaukee, as you pointed out, I think it's the presence of Dame, whose numbers have dropped a little bit from his greatness in Portland.
Yeah.
And so he kind of takes the pressure off as a great individual scorer. And so that allows Giannis to be much more gaudy in his production level. And I think the whistle gets very friendly nowadays. So I think these things kind of get mitigated in the playoffs. As far as Tatum is concerned, like, Boston's a good team. The straw poll and the MVP race, look at Miami, a couple seasons ago when they were the 1 seed, as you just pointed out. Like, who was the MVP candidate on that team? Was it PJ Tucker? Who was it? Was it Jimmy Butler? Was it Bam Adebayo? Like, they both missed time during that year. You can have the number 1 team in the conference without necessarily having the best player in the conference. So I'm all about that.
full disclosure, I was a voter in the straw poll here. My top 5 were the same, almost the same. I had Embiid number 1, Jokic number 2, Giannis number 3. I did have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander number 4. Luka came in at number 5 on ESPN's poll pretty handedly. I didn't have Luka at 5. I actually went LeBron number 5, but I can't say that I felt awesome about it. To me, it was between, at the time, Kevin, when we had to turn these in, Luka, Kevin Durant, and LeBron. Those were sort of the 3 that I had. But just for fun, David, like, who would be your top 5? Would your top 4 look about the same, and would you have a different 5th?
No, I'd have Jokic first. I think he's still the best player there. I'm not as huge a fan of Joel Embiid, so I will put him third behind Giannis, and then you could probably go with Shea there as 4th, and then Luka at 5th. I think that's fair.
That's fine too. Jaime Jaquez Jr. probably not going to win Rookie of the Year, but he could be in the running for a different award. We'll tell you which one after this.
Today's show is brought to you by Betterhelp. Look, it's the holidays. I know it's a difficult time for a lot of people. While everybody might think of, Christmas carols and celebrating and holiday celebrations and things of that sort, for others, it might be a much more difficult time, a challenging time. And sometimes a way of addressing those challenges just by talking to somebody, especially a licensed therapist. And if you want to talk to somebody because the holidays have got you down, or maybe it's just a lingering problem that you want to be able to discuss, then BetterHelp is the option for you. There's nothing better, I think, for people who are going through these kind of challenges than being able to talk to a therapist. Therapy, I think, is understanding what it does and the benefits of that. Just a couple episodes ago, we talked to somebody who saw it, not necessarily a therapist, but a sports psychologist, and Duncan Robinson, because he was going through the challenges of his individual season last year. And I think it's helped him. And obviously his production on the court kind of reflects that. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime at no additional charge. So make sure you get to BetterHelp. In the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. And today you might get a 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I want to talk about a bunch of different awards, David. Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Most Improved, Coach of the Year. We're going to break down a bunch of these things and where certain Miami Heat players might factor into these conversations. Well, let's start with Rookie of the Year, because I think we've talked about this a lot in regard to Jaime Jaquez Jr., who I think is, by pretty much consensus now, the third best rookie in this class behind Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama. I think most people are there with Jaime being number 3, certainly top 4. He's got no shot at winning Rookie of the Year. I don't see it happening. It's going to be Chet, probably. It could still be Wembanyama if he finishes the season strong. Again, we've talked a lot about Jaime's Rookie of the Year candidacy. I think he actually might be a candidate for a different award. But before I get to that, do you have anything else on the Rookie of the Year thing?
No, I mean, it's so difficult to kind of parse through it because, I think you could make a case that Chet really shouldn't qualify as a rookie considering he had a year of training, even though he was injured and everything else like that. I know this was held against
I've been with you on this. No, and it's not fair. And I'm sorry that you didn't play your actual rookie year. It sucks, but you're just going to be ineligible for the award. I'm with you on that. It's a little bit of a leg up, and I think it's unfair. But those are the rules for some reason. I don't know. I think baseball does it this way, but I know the NFL doesn't do it this way. It's just it's such a weird thing that the NBA does.
Not till you play your first, second in the NBA. I don't know if you've been a journeyman in the G League for 10 years and then you get a call up to the NBA, does that qualify you as a rookie?
Yeah, you're technically a rookie. It's weird.
So it is a little weird. No, and as far as Wembanyama, his numbers have been good on a bad team, and they're struggling. But there was so much hype going into the season.
Mhm.
Like he would have had to have been historically awful to
Right.
not be considered a
Right.
top candidate.
And he's not. And he's not.
And he's not. No, he's not.
very good.
So yeah, no. What's the category in which Jaime
Okay.
might qualify for? Because I'm curious.
I'm here to officially begin Jaime Jaquez Jr. Sixth Man of the Year. He has no shot at winning Rookie of the Year. Let's let that go. I actually was kind of looking at the numbers. It's not crazy. It's not crazy. Jaime Jaquez Jr. doing what he's doing as basically a sixth man, mostly coming off the bench. I know he started the other night in place of Jimmy Butler, but he mostly comes off the bench. For a winning team, all right? So on FanDuel, their favorites are Bogdan Bogdanovic, Austin Reeves, Tim Hardaway, Cole Anthony, Malik Monk, and I don't remember what order it's in, but it's those kind of guys. Those are the favorites for sixth man of the year, and I don't really have a gripe with any of them. But Jaime is 12th in points per game among players who have mostly come off the bench and have played a certain amount of minutes. He's in 12th in points per game, but first in field goal percentage, shooting almost 53% overall. He's fifth in rebounding, fifth in assists, third in steals, third in minutes per game. He's shooting 42% on threes. And again, I repeat this, for a winning team playing an important role for a team that was in the finals last season. If I had to vote on sixth man of the year right now, I probably would not vote Jaime Jaquez. But I think he's in the conversation. And I think we need to have that. What?
Should be on the ballot. I mean,
let's put him on the ballot. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I think that's fair. I think when you look at the overall game, and I know there are issues with Jaime defensively that he continues to work through as a rookie, again, despite the fact that he's older or whatnot, I think he probably has as good, if not a better all-around game than any of those top candidates that you listed before. Austin Reeves is not a great defensive player. Malik Monk certainly not a great defensive player. Bogdanovic is not. I mean, I think Jaquez, again, despite his limitations defensively, is still as better than anybody else considered there. And given his playmaking abilities and the fact that he is, as you mentioned, a factor on a winning team, that should be all you need as far as consideration. Like, where does he rank in terms of who are the top points per game players as far as those six-man candidates?
Bogdan Bogdanovic, which at some point he's got to win this award if he just plays for a team that's not sad. For once in his career, it was Sacramento and then it's Atlanta. That dude, he's so good, but he just keeps playing for the saddest teams in the league. He's gonna get traded to Detroit or something. Bogdan Bogdanovic is leading. That's true. 17.6 points per game. He's awesome. Great percentages all around, etc. Tim Hardaway has been great for Dallas off the bench, and I would maybe consider voting for him if I had to vote today. Austin Reeves has been very good since moving off the bench for the Lakers. He's kind of a fake sixth man because he comes off the bench, but basically plays almost 30 minutes a game and closes games for them. But whatever. I mean, that's Tyler Hero won it that way. And so we can't have much of a gripe here. Cole Anthony has been awesome for Orlando, and defensively, he's not like awesome as a one-on-one defender, but he's a good team defender. He draws a ton of charges and stuff like that. We just watched him. He got a great game against the Heat the other night. So I would consider him strongly on my ballot also. I'm a big Malik Monk fan. I just like when he gets rolling, but it's sort of, he's streaky. I think that's fair.
Yes.
But I would put Jaime firmly in that group, and I think that's fine. And again, if I had to vote, I'd probably go with Austin Reeves right now because he's a good player. He's basically their point guard at the end of games. He leads to winning. They're 12-7 when he comes off the bench. He's a helpful player. He's an impact guy. But if Jaime's not going to be realistically in the conversation for Rookie of the Year because it's basically a two-man race, I think we can move the conversation in this direction.
That's fair enough. Let's move on to another player and another award.
Well, this is where it gets tough. Defensive Player of the Year. Bam Adebayo has missed a lot of games. Also should mention, we're not going to talk about Tyler Hero in any of these because he is now officially ineligible because he's not going to reach the 65-game threshold that's new to the NBA this year. Tyler Hero is not going to be eligible for any of the end-of-season awards. So that we're not going to have – he's not going to be part of these conversations. But Bam Adebayo missed a few games, still very much eligible, potentially even the front runner. I don't think most people consider Bam the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year at this point because he did miss some games. But I do have one stat that I want to bring up that may convince people otherwise. That's going to come up next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less than on two to six player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's so great. Basketball season's here, obviously. You can pick combo projections now with football and basketball from their specials league, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes two or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of three-pointers made and receptions. Watch the winnings roll in. You want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. It's great. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. You get a first deposit match of up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Daily fantasy sports made easy.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, like the videos on YouTube, subscribe on your favorite podcast app as well. Let's talk Defensive Player of the Year. Bam Adebayo, that's his award. He was laying the groundwork for a Defensive Player of the Year campaign here before he missed 7 straight games with this hip injury, but he looks great coming back now. He looked great before that. If he's healthy, I think we're just going to see him kind of further his case for Defensive Player of the Year. However, I think the front runner here, and rightfully so right now, is Rudy Gobert. He's the best defender on the best defensive team in the league, and he's the guy. So Gobert right now is considered the betting favorite according to FanDuel by far. He's minus 115 for Defensive Player of the Year in order behind Rudy Gobert. Anthony Davis at plus 550. Chet Holmgren at plus 850. He's been that good, man. I don't even have a problem with that. Joel Embiid at plus 1,800. Jaren Jackson Jr. at plus 2,500. And then Bam Adebayo at plus 2,500. So Bam and Jaren are right there. Brook Lopez a distant, 7th behind those guys. But that's your top 6. And I think it's those 6. I'm not sure about Jaren Jackson Jr., even though if the Grizzlies kind of get on a roll here with Ja Morant, maybe something happens there. Yep. But that feels like a good top 6 to me. And we could debate the order, and I suppose we will. Here's the thing. One of the defensive stats are really tough, but one of the ones I look at is field goal percentage that you hold players to by the rim, by the basket, if we're talking about centers, right? And in this instance, Rudy Gobert is dominating. He is holding opposing players to 15.5% fewer or percentage points less than what they normally shoot at the basket. 15.5%. That is a monster number. Basically, nobody scores on Rudy Gobert when he's by the rim. And we just saw that when the Heat played the Timberwolves in that second half. We saw it. So he's in the lead there. Behind him, Anthony Davis and Chet Holmgren are about the same. Anthony Davis minus 11.4% opponents shooting at the rim. Chet Holmgren minus 11.5%. You have Joel Embiid, who's actually second behind Gobert at minus 12.6%. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. at minus 10.1%. So everybody kind of holding guys at least 10 percentage points fewer than what they usually score, except for Bam. Bam is at minus 4.9% at the basket, which is fine. It's not bad, but it's not elite. It's not DPOY elite. And so I think people might look at that and say, you know what? I just can't vote for Bam as a center because he's not protecting the rim, which is a center's primary job, at the same rate as those other guys. But, and a big but coming, David, expand that to overall shooting percentage, not just within 6 feet of the basket, overall shooting percentage. Bam is the best in terms of holding players to less than their usual shooting percentages. Gobert, still very good, minus 6.8. Elite mark, elite. Davis, not as good anymore, minus 3.3. Chet Holmgren, still very good, minus 6.3. Joel Embiid, who's actually the best, minus 7.5, but we're not going to talk about that. Jaren Jackson Jr., minus 1.6, a lot worse than his 10.1 by the basket. Bam Adebayo is a minus 7.2. He's actually better holding guys below their shooting percentages, wings and ball handlers, out away from the basket than he is even at the basket, which he's still good, just not elite. And I think that's a very important number here. And it speaks to what Bam's primary role is in this defense, which is everything. It's everything. And I don't know that Rudy Gobert does everything the way that Bam has to. I don't know that Joel Embiid does everything the way that Bam has to. I think maybe the closest comp is a guy like Anthony Davis, and even Chet Holmgren as a rookie here are the closest comps to Bam. You can argue Anthony Davis at his peak is probably more of a disruptive defender than Bam Adebayo, but I think Bam's consistency is better than Anthony Davis's consistency, and so that would be my argument for making that for Bam Adebayo as Defensive Player of the Year. And we can go to Cooper Moorhead from Heat.com. He's got all the isolation numbers from Synergy and Second Spectrum and all these things that he could bring up, and he has brought them up before. But I think that overall shooting percentage number, and I'm sorry I'm going long here, David, I think it speaks to Bam's candidacy here.
He doesn't have a shot. Doesn't matter. I mean, this is a moot discussion. No, it really is. It's a moot discussion. I just think
he doesn't have a shot. He's been a finalist.
That was like tossing a bone to a starving dog. It's ridiculous. They did not consider him. They don't appreciate what Bam Adebayo does. And every year when he
name names, name them.
Kevin O'Connor and 90% of the Ringer staff. Michael Pina notwithstanding, who is a Boston homer himself and has preferred Bam Adebayo in his preseason predictions. Guy. He is a Bam guy because he sees Bam crash all over.
Does it count that I wrote like a handful of stories for the Ringer? Am I being lumped? Do I count as like the voice on Miami there? I'm trying to infiltrate. David. No. I'm trying to go behind enemy lines here.
No, I don't know. I don't think it does. But I just, it's just very strange how like Bam is perceived. And look, even just yesterday, I think it was a statement by Eddie Johnson of the Phoenix Suns and Justin Termine of Sirius Radio talking about Bam Adebayo, and they're like, oh, he's just not a very good defender because his shot blocking numbers suck. It's like, this is so ridiculous.
Wait, they really say that he's a not very good defender? What do they think he does then?
Nothing. He does nothing out there, Wes. He just kind of goes around. He's not a rim protector. If you're not a rim protector, you're not a good defender somehow. Like, I don't know how you boil down defense to steals or block shots. Like, I don't know how you can distill everything that defense is for 48 minutes and just say, you know what, you have to have X number of this or X number of that in order to qualify. But that's basically where it's come down to. And I know that's it's been like this for a while, right? You had your kind of big lumbering stiff out there, and the only reason they were out on the floor when these awards were given out was because they could block shots. Mark Eaton comes to mind. It's not a knock on the late great Mark Eaton, but sure, that's that was basically his role. Stand there, don't let anybody score at the rim. With Bam Adebayo, his level of defense is so different and so great, and I mean, we've talked about it so often. And if you're not watching him as often as we have, and obviously these guys are not, you don't respect what Bam Adebayo does. And somehow
You don't have to watch the Heat as much as we do. You don't. And I don't expect national people to watch the Heat as much as we do. You and I watch every Heat game. I don't expect national people to watch every Heat game. And if any national person tells you they watch every Heat game, they're probably lying. Yeah, and that's okay. Watch 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5. That's a normal expectation. If you're a national person, you got to watch all these other games. That's fine.
But then what do you do? What do you do? Think about that. Like, what do you do? Like when you say, oh, let's say there's a team that you're not familiar with, you haven't been able to catch that much off. It's like, oh, X player is doing great. You go, oh yeah, really? So you watch the game, right? You go, oh, confirmation of the eye test. And then what do? You go to Basketball Reference. You go to different sites though. Yeah, no, I get it. But you watch that one game, then you go to the Basketball Reference or wherever you get your stats from. It's like, oh, is he really that great a defender though? Look at his block.
Well, I got another stat. Can I give you another stat, and then we'll wrap this up? Cleaning the glass. They break it out in a half court defense, and I love that. It's a great stat. So, just plus minus with Bam and these other players on and off the court. Very simple. It's a team stat. I understand that. But it does help put into context the impact of these players on their defenses, right? And we use on-off stats for MVP all the time. I think we can use it for DPOY. Rudy Gobert, half court. The Timberwolves have their defensive rating is 8 points better per 100 possessions with Rudy Gobert on the court. That's an awesome number. 8 points per 100 possessions in the half court. That's an insane number. Again, Rudy Gobert, probably the front runner for this award. Anthony Davis, 0.9. The Lakers are pretty much the same in the half court defensively, with or without Anthony Davis. Chet Holmgren, +4. That's a good number, especially for a rookie. Joel Embiid, +1.3, actually. The Sixers are 1.3 points per 100 possessions worse in the half court with Joel Embiid, which is a weird number. Jaren Jackson Jr. about even. Bam Adebayo, and I already told you Rudy Gobert is leading the pack right now at 8, +8 in terms of defensive rating in the half court. Bam Adebayo, 10.2. The Heat are 10.2 points per 100 possessions better with Bam Adebayo on the court. Now, again, this is a team stat. It has something to do with the depth behind him. Behind Rudy Gobert is Naz Reid, a very good defender, right? And when Rudy Gobert is off the floor, it's Naz Reid and Karl-Anthony Towns. That number is awesome for Gobert. That number is also awesome for Bam, even though it's Thomas Bryant and it's Orlando Robinson and it's Kevin Love on the court when it's not Bam Adebayo. But that's a gargantuan number, and I think it's also one that should be taken into consideration. So, look, we can look at the stats and you can look at all the things. And I'm with you on this, David. If you're not watching the Heat consistently, it doesn't have to be every game, but you got to watch a handful of these games. Then maybe you're not going to know what it is that Bam Adebayo does. But I do think that Bam, because he is a betting favorite for this award via FanDuel, because he has gotten real consideration from national media, Justin Turnmine and Eddie Johnson notwithstanding, but he has gotten real consideration from other national media. I think he's very much in the running for this award, but he has to play awesome going forward. All right, really quick, because we're running out of time here. Most improved coach of the year. We talked about Duncan Robinson's case for most improved on a recent show. Duncan Robinson, along with, and I think these are the contenders for that award, Tyrese Maxey, Alperen Sengun, Scotty Barnes, Tyrese Halliburton, Kobe White now, and then maybe Jalen Suggs, maybe on the kind of outer boundary of those contenders. But that's, to me, I think the contenders. And then for coach of the year, I think this is wide open. Jamal Mosley, Chris Finch, Mark Daigneault from Oklahoma City, Rick Carlisle, Ime Udoka, Nick Nurse, Ty Lue, Joe Mazzulla, probably, since the record. I think we probably have to throw him in there. Willie Green, and then obviously I think Eric Spoelstra is always going to at least get a look, even if he's not really considered just because he's Eric Spoelstra.
No chance for either of those awards. I mean, again, the most improved player has been distilled into good player that takes a leap into greatness. And I think that's Halliburton, at least from the public perception. If he's getting MVP consideration, at least he is according to that straw poll, then he's probably going to be seen as the reason why Indiana does as well as they do. And look, Indiana might have a deep playoff run in them, although that seems unlikely unless they make a major change to their roster. But given everything that Halliburton has done, he should probably be considered.
By the way. Yeah,
it's fine.
And Maxey, I think Maxey is the betting favorite on FanDuel right now, and I'm okay with that too, honestly, even though that's a little bit tougher to parse between skill development and opportunity, where Halliburton is just taken into things and gone.
As far as coach of the year, it's so much harder to quantify. Like, Chris Finch is a fine coach, and I think he's a great offensive mind. Everybody, really loves him. I think in the NBA community, he's well respected and everything else like that. But he wasn't considered a good coach last year when he had the exact same roster. So I'm not sure exactly what he's done differently from one year to the next. I mean, if you're looking
players
at
are
consistency,
healthy. Players are healthy.
Maybe
that's it. That's kind of it. No,
yeah.
I think Chris Finch is an awesome coach. I would not vote for him for coach of the year. I would actually vote Jamal Mosley right now. I really like how he's got the Magic playing. And you listen to them talk and you listen to him talk. It's a lot of like kind of ripping the pages out of the playbook of the Miami Heat and the Heat culture thing. It kind of feels like they're trying to build something similar there. And so I got respect for it. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your podcast app.